Sometimes clothes get so worn out they don't feel wearable anymore, but all they really need is an upcycle. So I got this hoodie back in 2021, and I have worn it pretty much to death. It has some holes in it that I forgot to get any footage of, and very obviously the print on the front is coming off. It's also just not really a style that I want to wear anymore because it's really long and covers me up a lot. But I really love the colour, and I really like that it's a hooded t-shirt because I don't own any others of those. And the print on the back of the shirt is surprisingly still very much intact. So all in all, it's just a perfect piece to upcycle. Firstly, I had to take the hoodie completely apart before I could start this project, starting with cropping it. I wanted this to be on par with the shirts I usually wear so I could add it into my usual rotation. So I decided to crop it just under the armpits, and I did it straight across to make the hemming easier in the future. I kind of wish I had done it slightly curved so it was slightly higher at the front, just because I feel like it would have been more flattering for this design, but that is something I could very much add to a different project later down the line. And then for the rest of the shirt, I just cut all the seams out of it. I could have used a seam ripper for this, but it felt quite pointless for this particular piece because it's quite oversized. I don't have to worry about the hems making it too small for me, and seam ripping just takes a really long time, so I just wanted to save myself the trouble and just cut them all out instead. With the shirt now in pieces, I then went on to attempting to keep the rest of the design off the front of it. For this, I used a scrubber that I used to clean my induction hob, and it did work to a certain extent, but only really in the areas where it was already coming off more than others. On areas where the transfer hadn't listed at all, it didn't really budge all that much. It was, however, very fun to do and makes me want to purposely create a project that I just have to scrub at, because I really liked watching the design disappear. Definitely felt like I was doing more than I actually was though. I thought about going over it again with actual sandpaper, but I was worried about ripping the fabric underneath and destroying the shirt completely. So instead I actually ended up covering the design in stain remover and threw it into the wash to try and remove more of the pieces. And this worked surprisingly more than I thought it would. You can really see the difference it makes on camera. It also pulled some of the colour out of the transfer, which was also very interesting to me. Makes me think I should worry a little bit more about what stain removers are doing to my neon clothing, because I really don't want to remove any colour off my usual clothing. Once it came out of the wash, I did scrub it again, but it didn't really make much of a difference, so I kind of just left it to the side and moved on to something else, knowing that I'm going to have to come back to it later. I really wanted to make the sleeves really interesting for this project, but also still fit into my wardrobe, so I decided to do a double layered sleeve with scallops. To make it multiple layers, I had to do each piece separately, so we're just going to do the top pieces for now. Using leftover fabric, I cut off the bottom of the shirt. I traced out the shape of the curved side of the sleeves and drew out scallops following that arch. As scallops are just half circles in a line, you can use any circular object to make this piece. I chose to use some thread for this as I knew I wanted the scallops to be reasonably small so I can get more on the amount of space that I had. But if you wanted to, you could create something similar with any size you want. With the design drawn out, I laid the piece on top of a second piece of fabric, good size together, and sewed along the exact lines that I just drew. Once that was done, I could just split the piece right size out, iron it flat and sew it directly onto the sleeve piece, thus creating the additional layer on top of it. I'm really glad I only had enough fabric to create short sections of these scallops, because they came out a lot bulkier than I expected, and they definitely wouldn't have worked inside the armpit area. They would have just added too much fabric and make the shirt really unwearable. With them being shorter, I get the effect that I want without the uncomfortability. Once the sleeve topper was in place, I then added the sleeves back onto the main body of the shirt. To do this, I just followed along the exact same seam line that I originally removed. Obviously, this moved the sleeves up slightly higher onto the shoulder than before, but it really doesn't change the way that the overall piece falls on me. That is it for the sleeves for now. We will go back to them slightly later on. I promise this video isn't too much going backwards and forwards, it's just this one section. So we are now going back to the decal design on the front. In my original design, I wanted to have a small heart on the center chest, but because I couldn't get most of the design off, I had to go much bigger than I expected. And I also had to cover up the remaining plastic, so I opted for using fabric paint. For this cover, I actually used black paint. Black is a very uncommon choice for me to make, but the writing on the back of the shirt was already black, so I felt like it would draw the whole design together a little bit more and just made everything feel a little bit more consistent in a way that the original design actually didn't have. I did always find it a little bit odd that the front of the shirt had a big orange and pink transfer on it, where the back just had black block text. They were also just transferred completely differently, like the material was completely different. I can't tell you what either of the transferring processes were because I don't know anything about transfers, but you can clearly see that one was the better choice on how well it held up over time. My assumption is that one method only works with block single colours, whereas the other one can be used for any sort of design that you want, but I could be completely wrong with that. Either way, the front and the back of the original design didn't have much cohesion between them, so I wanted to add a little bit more cohesion through my upcycling process. Painting in the backdrop was also really relaxing to do. I just drew out some scallops in the same way I did for the sleeve toppers and traced out that design with a paint made from 1 part acrylic and 2 part fabric medium. It's such a simple and easy process to do that I really want to try it with some other projects, especially seeing as I now have a litre of fabric medium that needs to get used up. The only thing you have to remember for this is that you have to heat set everything, so you have to heat set it with an iron for about 10 to 15 minutes to make sure all the paint doesn't wash off in the wash. Background all painted, I then moved on to making the heart that was going to go over the top of it. For this, I just used even more leftover fabric from before. I really enjoy making upcycle pieces like this. They're not only used as much as the original fabric as possible, but also only use the original fabric, because it makes these clothing projects so much cheaper to do. I do want to try doing a project where I combine multiple pieces into one, because I think that will be a new sort of challenge for me, but I do really enjoy being able to make something out of my old clothes without feeling the need to spend lots of money crafting, because sewing is already such an expensive hobby for me. I really don't need to be doing really expensive projects all the time. With the heart created, I then sewed it directly onto my t-shirt using a zigzag stitch all the way around the edge. I find this to be the easiest way to add these types of features onto clothing, but you could definitely make it look a bit daintier by using a thread that matches the original fabric colour, or by sewing it using a straight stitch inside the edges of your design. Alternatively, you could also hand stitch it on using invisible stitch, but for me that's just a lot of effort, especially when I own a sewing machine, so I always opt for the sewing machine easy option. With the main design all finished, I then sewed up the side seams of the shirt, making it wearable again. And once it was wearable, I could then move back onto finishing off the sleeves. The second layer of scallops was slightly trickier than the first layer because they needed to be sewn on a round rather than a flat plane. I think the fabric really did help me out here because it's slightly stretchy, so you can pull it into different angles very easily, but it isn't so stretchy that the scallops warped as you sewed them. So it definitely wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be going into this project. Once the scallops were done, I also needed to sew down the additional fabric to prevent the scallops from flipping back the wrong way out. So I opted to do this by doing 2 straight lines of straight stitching in black thread over the top. I thought doing 2 lines would make it look more like a purposeful choice, and the black would also match the stitching on the centre of the heart, but I do think it would have looked nicer in yellow thread that matched the shirt instead, because there isn't any other hem details with the black thread anywhere on the design, like the hood is done in yellow for example. But I don't mind it all that much, so I don't think I'm going to redo it. I'm just going to keep it in mind for next project. Finally, I just needed to sew the hem back into place. I decided to cut the original hem down to half the width so that it would better match the new proportions of the hoodie and also not add too much additional length to it. To sew it nicely into place, I just had to stretch the hem piece as I sewed it down. If you don't do this, you'll end up with a really stiff wavy hem, and while it could be used in a different context as a design feature, I didn't want that here. I just wanted a very regular hem, so stretching it is the best way to do this. With that said, that is it for the process, and I can finally show you the final result. I personally really love how this came out, especially the sleeves. I can't believe I haven't done 2 layered sleeves like this ever before. They are just perfect. They add so much whimsy to it. I feel like it kind of makes it look like a chicken, which I love. I also just love the height of this. I feel like it makes it more wearable for me, and it really goes with the orange bodysuit that I made in a previous video. So I feel like I might make the same bodysuit but in yellow in case I want to have a monochrome look with this. The only thing I don't fully love about this is the design here. It just really warped the fabric quite a lot doing this much stitching on it. So I feel like I really need to go over this with a really hard iron to get the waves out of it. And also, like I said before, not a huge fan of the stitching on the sleeves, but I don't think they look too bad, and I feel like no one else would notice them but me. But yeah, that is it for this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like down below, comment what else you'd like me to do, and subscribe as I post a new video every single week, and I'd love to see you again. But until then, bye!